Ava wipes down the last table. The room is empty. The customers left an hour ago. All she can hear is the sound of the dishwasher running in the kitchen and the hum of the refrigerators. She's collecting rags and spray. It's Friday. After a shift like this, all she dreams of is the couch. She's 25, and she's been working here as a waitress for 6 of those years. Sometimes it feels like nothing's changed. Ava turns off the main lights in the room, leaving only a dim lamp by the bar. She heads to the kitchen to check out the register. Just then, a sound is heard. A dull, heavy thud from below. From under the floor, she stops. It doesn't sound like pipes or machinery. It's the sound of a blow. Once, then silence. Ava stands and listens. She looks at the floor beneath her feet. There's the basement, a large, dark storage room. The owner rarely goes down there. It's filled with old supplies and broken furniture. Mice, she thinks. Or something fell. She takes a step toward the kitchen, deciding to ignore it. But her legs won't move. Something's wrong. The sound was too clear. Too man-made. Knock, knock, 2 blows. Quick! And then silence again. Ava's heart beats faster. It's not mice. Mice don't knock like that, or rattle boxes. The sound is repeated. It wants to be heard. It's coming from right under her feet. She turns slowly and looks at the door to the utility room. Beyond it are the stairs to the basement. The rules forbid going down there alone after closing time. But the rules don't say what to do if someone knocks from down there. Ava hesitates. She could call the owner, or just leave. But what if there's someone there? What if someone's lost or unwell? Okay, she says out loud. Just taking a look. She turns on the light in the utility room. The air smells of detergent and dust. The basement stairs are dark. She flicks the switch. A dim light comes on below. The wooden steps creak under her feet. It's cool and damp below. The lamp's light is enough to reveal shelves of boxes and jars. Everything is covered in a layer of gray dust. Ava listens. Silence. Complete and thick. It must have been my imagination, she thinks, and is about to leave. And then she notices, in the far corner, behind a tall shelf of empty jars, the wall looks different. It's not concrete. It's metal. Ava carefully makes her way between the bookcase and the wall. A heavy metal door stands before her. It's old, the paint peeling. It's built into the wall so tightly that it's almost invisible. There's no handle, just a large, new lock. It hangs on a thick metal eye. The lock looks sturdy and modern. It clearly doesn't belong here. Ava touches the door with her palm. The metal is cold. She raps her knuckles. The sound is dull and heavy, and then an answer comes from behind the door. A quiet but distinct sound. Metal hit something, once, then again. It's not her imagination. Someone is sitting behind that door, and that someone just answered her knock. Ava jumps back from the door as if from fire. Her back hits the bookcase. She looks at the lock, at the door, at the dark corner of the basement. Now she knows. The knocking came from here. Someone is trapped. She has to decide. Now. Go upstairs, leave and forget, or find out who's there. The thought comes immediately. A key. A week ago, she dropped a folder in the utility room. Among the papers, she found an old key. It was rusty and alone. Ava didn't throw it away. She put it in a tin box on the shelf with paper clips and other junk. She turns sharply and heads for the stairs. Her footsteps are loud. In the utility room, she reaches for the top shelf. Her hands work quickly. There's the box. She removes the lid. The key lies there. Small, dark, covered in rough rust. She takes it. It is cold and rough to the touch. With this key in her fist, she returns to the basement. She makes her way to the metal door again. It seems to her that it now feels cold. Ava picks up the key and looks at the keyhole. The chances are slim, but she has to try. She inserts the key. It goes in tightly, but all the way. Ava presses down on it. At first, nothing happens. She turns her hand harder. There's a dry click, and the key turns with difficulty. The lock is open. Ava freezes. She pulls out the key. Now she needs to remove the lock itself. She pries the shackle with her fingers. The lock is heavy. It slips off the lug and falls to the concrete floor. The sound seems very loud. The door is unlocked now. Ava looks at it. She can just leave. She's already done more than she should have. But she can't. Not now. She braces her palms against the door and pushes. The door is heavy. It gives way reluctantly, creaking. It opens inward. Beyond it is no room. A narrow stone staircase begins. It descends into complete darkness. The light from the basement doesn't reach beyond the first step. Ava takes out her phone. She turns on the flashlight. A bright beam cuts through the darkness. The stairs are steep and slippery. The steps are uneven. Rough brick walls line the sides. The stairs are short, 10, maybe 12 steps, and below, the floor is flat. The beam of light doesn't reach the wall. It's quiet from above. No knocking. The silence from this black hole is now the most frightening thing. Ava takes a step forward. She descends the steps slowly, holding onto the wall. The air below is heavy and stale. It smells damp and sour. She counts her steps. 5, 6. She's halfway down the stairs. A beam of light dances below. It illuminates part of the stone floor. Wooden boxes and some kind of cloth are visible. And a pipe, a thick, rusty pipe. And something by the pipe, some kind of object. Dark. Ava freezes. She slowly lowers the beam of the flashlight down onto the object. The light falls first on a boot, an expensive leather boot, covered in mud, then on a pair of trousers. They are wrinkled and dirty. Then on the hands. They are raised and handcuffed to a pipe. A long chain connects them. The beam of light rises higher. On the shirt. On the face. He sits with his head leaning against the pipe. He looks about 27. Black hair falls over his forehead. His facial features are sharp. He stares straight into the light of the lantern. His eyes do not blink. There's no fear in those eyes. Fury burns there, pure and sharp, but underneath it, there's weariness and pain. He looks at Ava, and his gaze makes her freeze. He doesn't say anything. He just watches. His chest rises and falls slowly. Ava stands on the stairs, unable to move. She looks at the chained man. He doesn't look like a vagabond. His clothes, even stained, are expensive. His posture, even in chains, seems accustomed to power. He is the reason for the knocking. He was locked here, on purpose. Ava lowers the beam of light so as not to blind him. Now she can see him better. There's a bruise on his face. His lip is split. His shirt is torn at the shoulder. "Who are you?" she wants to ask, but the words get stuck in her throat. He still looks at her silently. His anger subsides slightly, replaced by a cold, searching gaze. He looks at her waitress uniform, the phone in her hand, her frightened face. Then he slowly, almost imperceptibly, shakes his head. It's not quite no, but rather a warning. It's as if he's saying, "Go away." The flashlight beam glides over his clothes. His dark trousers are made of good fabric. His shirt, once white or cream, is now gray with dirt, torn at the shoulder. Dark stains are visible on it, like dried mud or something else. His jacket is lying nearby in the dust. It's expensive, made of fine wool. Now it's torn. These aren't just random clothes. This is a suit, an expensive suit. It speaks of money and power, or did, until he was locked in here. The man moves his lips. He's trying to say something. At first, all that comes out is a quiet hissing sound, like air from a punctured tire. He winces as if in pain. He coughs dryly, tries again. His voice is a hoarse whisper, almost inaudible. "Why, ho!" escapes him, and he falls silent, swallowing. His throat is obviously dry. Ava is still standing on the stairs. Her feet feel like they've grown into stone. She sees his condition. She sees his expensive, ruined clothes. She sees the handcuffs. Her mind is racing. Who is he? Why is he here? Who put him here? Danger. The word pounded in her temples. Everything around her screamed danger. This door, this lock, this man in chains. She had to turn and run, now. But her legs don't move. They look at each other. The seconds drag on like minutes. The light from her phone illuminates his face. The rage in his eyes gradually fades. It doesn't disappear completely, but rather retreats, giving way to another feeling. Now there's weariness in his gaze, a deep, all-consuming weariness. And need. He no longer looks at her as a threat. He studies her. His gaze glides over her face, her simple hairstyle, her uniform emblazoned with the cafe logo. He doesn't see her as an enemy. He sees her as an opportunity, the only opportunity he's had since he's been sitting here. And then Ava sees it, a desperate, silent plea. It hides behind the remnants of pride in his pressed lips, in the tense line of his jaw, but it's there. It's in the way his eyes now hold hers, in the way he bows his head slightly, as if he can no longer hold it upright. That look speaks louder than any words. "Please, don't go!" Ava glances back at the stairs behind her. There's light there, a familiar basement, a familiar world. She can go back there, close that door, leave, and forget. Pretend nothing happened. She looks at him again, at the bruise under his eye, at the abrasions on his wrists beneath the metal of the handcuffs, at the way his fingers move weakly, as if searching for support. She can't leave. She can't just close the door and leave a living person here, even if he's dangerous, even if it will cause problems. The decision comes not as a thought, but as an action. Her body moves of its own accord. She takes the last step down and steps onto the floor of the damp room. She stands before him now, very close. Only a few steps separate them. He smells of sweat, dust, and something metallic, maybe blood. He opens his mouth again. This time, a sound comes out. Whoa, yeah, he croaks. Then he coughs. He gathers his strength, his face contorted in effort. Water! The word comes out roughly, like rubble. But it is understandable. Water. He needs water. Ava nods, though he probably can't see it in the dim light. Yes, she says, her own voice quiet and hesitant. I'll get it. She takes a step back to get some water. And at that moment, his hand, the one closest to her, twitches. The chain rattles. No. The word is a little clearer now. He coughs again. Help. From the beginning. Help! He doesn't mean water. He means chains. Ava freezes. She looks at the handcuffs, the thick chain, the pipe. How can she do this? She has no key, no tools. She looks at him again. He holds her gaze. His eyes no longer plead. They command. The old strength, the power, the habit of commanding flares in them again. Help, he repeats. No longer asking, but demanding. And Ava suddenly understands what will happen if she frees him. She will unleash the unknown. A man who someone saw fit to lock away like this, in a secret dungeon. Whoever it was, they didn't want him to get out. She glances over her shoulder at the stairs leading up. For a second, she thinks she sees a shadow flicker in the doorway above. But there's no one there. It's a trick of the light, and her nerves. It's quiet. The cafe upstairs is empty. It's probably quiet outside too. No one knows she's here. No one saw her come down. She looks at his hands, at the bruises, at how uncomfortably he sits. He's not asking for water. He's asking for freedom. Now. Ava takes a deep breath. Okay, she says. I'll try. Ava looks around the dank room. Her flashlight beam glides around the corners. Behind a pile of empty crates, she spots something metallic. She moves closer. It's a crowbar. Old, rusty, but heavy and sturdy. Someone left it here a long time ago. Perhaps for similar purposes. She takes it. The metal is cold and rough. She returns to the man. He watches her every move. Move your hands away, Ava says, her voice firmer now. She doesn't know if this will work, but she has to try. He struggles to lift his arms, straining the chain. Ava presses the tip of the crowbar against the chain link next to the cuff on his left hand. She raises the crowbar and strikes with all her might. The ringing is deafening in the small room. Sparks fly from the metal. The chain holds. She hits him a second time, and a third. Her hands tremble from the blows. On the fourth blow, there's a crack. The chain link next to the handcuff snaps. The man's left arm falls. He groans in pain from the numb muscles. Now his right arm is still chained to the pipe, but it has more freedom. Hold the chain, Ava says. She gestures. He understands. He takes the chain in his right hand and pulls it away from the pipe as far as he can. Ava aims the crowbar at the same link, but from the other side, right where it attaches to the handcuff. She strikes twice. On the third strike, the chain bounces off the pipe, now hanging only on his wrist. He's free of the pipe, but the handcuffs are still on him, connected by a short piece of chain. He tries to stand up. His legs give way. He falls to one knee, bracing himself with his free left hand on the floor. Slowly, Ava says. She drops the crowbar. It clattered onto a rock. She threaded his left arm over her shoulder. Get up. Lean on me. He nods. His breathing is ragged. He pushes himself up, using her for support. He is heavy. So heavy. She feels her back tense. They move toward the stairs. He stumbles, each step a struggle. They climb the narrow stone stairs slowly, step by step. He grabs the wall with his free hand. Here they are in the main basement. Ava pushes the heavy metal door to close it. She doesn't lock it. Let it look like it did before. They walk through the basement to the utility room stairs. He almost falls on the first wooden steps. Ava holds on with all her strength. Finally, they're in the utility room. She leads him to the sink. He grabs its edge. Water, he says again. Ava turns on the tap. She finds a plastic cup. She fills it. She hands it to him. His hands are shaking. He drinks in small sips, slowly. Then another glass. And another. He rinses his face. The water mixes with the dirt on his skin, running down in streams. He looks a little more alive. He turns to face her, still holding onto the sink. "Kihan," he says hoarsely. "My name is Kihan." Ava nods. "Ava?" She wants to ask him what happened, but now is not the time. First, she needs to get out of here. She peers out of the utility room into the dark hall. All is quiet. "We need to go," she says. "Can you walk?" Kihan takes a step away from the sink. He sways, but holds his ground. "Yes." He says it as if he's forcing himself. He follows her across the hall to the exit. He moves slowly, but independently. Ava is already thinking about how to get him to her car. But first, she needs to look outside. She approaches the large window by the entrance. The blinds are almost closed. She carefully pushes two slats aside with her fingers to peer out. Kihan stands next to her. Suddenly, he grabs her hand. His fingers are strong, even if they're weak. "Stop," he whispers sharply. He leans toward the crack in the blinds himself. His body tenses. Ava looks in the same direction. Across the street, near a dark entrance, stand two men. They are dressed in dark, almost black clothes. They are not smoking, not talking on the phone. They are simply standing and looking. At the cafe, their gaze slowly moves over the facade, the windows, the front door. Ava freezes. "Who is this?" Kihan doesn't answer. His face turns stony. He moves away from the window, pulling her with him deeper into the room, away from the glass. "It's them," he says simply. His voice is low and flat. "They're waiting, or watching." "Police?" Ava asks. He shakes his head briefly. "No." One look from him is enough to understand. These are the ones who put him here, or those who work for them. They are outside. Exit through the front door is now impossible. "The back exit," Ava says quickly. "Through the kitchen into the yard." She takes his arm again and leads him toward the kitchen. He stops. "Does the yard open onto an alley?" "Yes." "They'll be there too. One in front, one in back. Standard." He says this as a statement of fact. He knows their methods. They stand in the darkness of the kitchen. The only sound is the hum of the refrigerators. Ava feels panic rising. They're trapped. She can't get out, and neither can he. And soon the cleaning will start, or the morning shift will arrive. Her gaze falls on a small door in the corner of the kitchen, a storage closet for cleaning supplies. It's tiny, about 1.5 meters wide and deep. "This way," she says. She opens the door. It's dark inside, smelling of bleach and dust. There are mops, buckets, and canisters of chemicals there. Kihan looks at the cramped space, then at her. He understands. Without a word, he squeezes inside. He has to bend over. He sits on the floor, leaning his back against the wall. There's not enough room on his knees. Ava looks at him. In the light coming from the kitchen, he looks lost and enormous in this small cage. "Don't close the door all the way," he says quietly. "And leave me something, just in case." She doesn't ask what it's for. She quickly takes off her sweater, which she was wearing under her uniform, and hands it to him. Then a bottle of water from the fridge, and her small pocket flashlight. "I'll be back soon," she says, and slowly closes the door, leaving a narrow gap. She's left alone in the kitchen, completely silent, except for the hum of the appliances. She's just hidden a stranger in her pantry. And outside, people are waiting for him. Ava doesn't leave. She sits down on the kitchen floor, her back to the pantry door. She turns off the kitchen light. Now, only the faint glow of the street lamp filters through the blinds on the back window. Silence. Then a creak from the pantry. Kihan shifts his position. He feels cramped and uncomfortable there. Ava listens to the sounds from the street. A car drives past. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. Every few minutes, it quietly crawls to the window and peers through the crack. The two men in black are still there. They stand in their places, one in front, one in the alley. They don't leave. She returns to her place by the door. Questions are spinning in her head. She can't ask them out loud, but the silence weighs on her even more. She turns to face the crack in the pantry door. It's dark there. She can barely see him. "Who are you?" she whispers. Her voice sounds loud in the silence. A long sigh comes from behind the door, then silence. "Why did they lock you in?" she whispers again. This time the answer comes immediately. Kihan's voice is quiet but clear. "Betrayed." He says nothing more. This one word hangs in the air. Betrayed. Ava sits, hugging her knees, and thinks, they betrayed him then, by his own people, those he trusted. So this wasn't a random attack. He was lured in on purpose or captured and abandoned here. So the people outside are his exes, or the new owners of what belonged to him. So he has power, a business, people, and now all of this is against him. This means that the danger for her is even greater than she thought. She doesn't ask anymore. She hears him drinking water again in the darkness, hears his breathing gradually even out. They sit like this for several hours. Ava dozes fitfully, waking at every sound outside. Kihan is awake in the pantry. She can feel him through the door. Once he speaks through the crack. "You should go home. It's not your problem." "There's no way to get me out of here now," she replies. "They're outside. They saw me lock myself in. If I go out alone, they might stop me. Ask." "They'll ask," he agrees quietly. "So we wait," says Ava. They don't talk anymore. Ava's alarm rings. It's time to open the cafe. She turns it off. She crawls to the window. The men in black have left. There's no one in their places. The street is empty. "They're gone," she whispers through the crack in the door. A groan comes from the pantry. Kihan tries to get up. Ava opens the door. He climbs out, his face pale from exhaustion and pain. He straightens up with difficulty. "Bathroom," he says. Ava shows him the way to a small, shared staff restroom. It locks from the inside. Ava quickly does the bare essentials, turns on the coffee machine, checks the living room. She doesn't open the curtains. She puts on the kettle. When Kihan emerges, he looks a little better. He's washed his face, tidied his hair, and taken off his stained shirt. Now he's wearing only a dark t-shirt, emphasizing his thin frame and the bruises on his arms. She silently places a mug of hot tea in front of him, and a sandwich. He looks at the food, then at her, nods. "Thank you." He drinks his tea slowly, with his eyes closed. Then he takes a bite of his sandwich. He eats with restraint, but it's clear he's hungry. He finishes and sets his mug on the table. "My name is Kihan," he says again, as if introducing himself formally. "I'm 27. I had business. Family business." He pauses, searching for the words. "Now my brother wants it, my younger brother. He thought he could manage it better, that I was in the way." He says this evenly, but Ava sees his jaw clench. "He made a deal with some of my people. They arranged a meeting. I came alone, like a fool. They took me, took my phone, my keys, brought me here. This is neutral territory, a deserted place, suitable for forgetting." He looks at his hands, at the abrasions from the handcuffs. "They left me here so I could change my mind, give in, or just disappear, while my brother consolidates his power." He looks up at Ava. "Those people on the street are his people. They didn't expect me to get out. They were waiting for instructions, or my corpse." He says this calmly, as if stating a fact. But these words change everything. Ava looks at him, at his tired but collected face, at the remnants of pride in his posture, his brother, his people, his business. Now she understands what she's dealing with. This isn't just an accident. This is an internal war, and she's brought it on herself. He takes the last sip of tea. "Now you know. You can call the police, or just show me the door. I'll leave." He says this, but they both know it's not an option. If his brother's men are looking for him, they'll be watching every exit from the area. He'll get out and be captured within half an hour. And if she calls the police, what will she say? And who will they come to next? Asking questions about his disappearance. Her. She shakes her head slowly. "No, you can't just leave. They'll find you." "It's none of your concern," he says, but without the same force. Ava snaps. She feels irritation, fear, and a responsibility that weighs heavily on her shoulders. "You won't survive alone on the streets like this. In this," she searches for the word, "in this state." Kihan looks at her silently, assessing her resolve. "Then what?" he asks finally. Ava thinks. Quickly. She has an apartment. Small, unremarkable. It's just a short walk through the courtyards. "You're coming with me," she says. "But first, we need to change you, from head to toe." He doesn't argue. He understands the necessity. Ava leads him back to the back room. There, among the lost and found items, is a box of old clothes the employees sometimes use for dirty work. She finds a pair of worn dark pants, a plain gray sweatshirt with a faded logo, and an old jacket. All are clean, but clearly cheap and unfashionable. She gives him the clothes. "Change your clothes." While he's busy changing behind the shelves, she rummages through the drawers. She finds scissors and a hair clipper, which she uses to trim her bangs when they get in the way. She's not a hairdresser, but right now, she needs a different personality, not a different style. He comes out. His expensive, stained trousers and shirt are discarded in the corner. Now he's wearing simple, baggy clothes. They already change his silhouette, making him less noticeable. But his face, his hair, neat, slightly long black hair, that's a sign. Sit down, Ava says, pointing to a stool. He sits down. She drapes an old curtain over his shoulders as a cape. She picks up the washing machine. She's never done this before. She turns it on. The hum seems very loud. It's just… Anyway, Kian says, looking at the wall in front of him. Ava starts at the temples. The clippers go in stripes, leaving dark strands falling to the floor. She tries to keep it even, but it ends up too short, almost bald, on the sides and back. She leaves a little longer on top, but then trims that hair with scissors too, making it look untidy and sticking out in all directions. She works silently, focused. He sits motionless. She sees a scar on the back of his head that she hadn't known about before. She sees the tense muscles in his neck. When she finishes and turns off the machine, there's silence. She shakes her hair off the curtain and steps aside. Kihan stands up and walks over to the old mirror hanging on the wall. He looks at his reflection, at his short-cropped hair, his plain sweatshirt, his tired face with a black eye. He stares for a long moment. His expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. Strange, as if he's seeing a stranger. He turns to her. "That'll do," he says curtly. And it feels like the highest praise. They exit through the backyard, down 3 alleys, through the yards of neighboring houses. Ava walks quickly, and he follows her, trying to keep up, but his legs are still weak. They don't bump into anyone. Her apartment is on the ground floor of an old brick building. She opens the door. Inside, a small hallway leads to a combined living room and kitchen. The space is cramped but clean. Books line the shelves, a worn but cozy sofa, and a small table. A coffee grinder and a few tea bags sit on the countertop. She lets him in and locks the door with all the locks. Kihan pauses at the threshold. His gaze slowly sweeps around the room. He sees photographs on the refrigerator, a few plants on the windowsill, a stack of books on the floor. He sees modesty and order. His own world was probably different, spacious, expensive, impersonal. It smells of the coffee she drank in the morning and paper, the smell of old books on the shelf. "Can I sit down?" he asks, pointing to the sofa. "Yes, of course," Ava says, suddenly embarrassed. I'll get the first aid kit. Those scrapes need to be treated." She returns with a small plastic box. It contains hydrogen peroxide, a bandage, plasters, and ointment. She places the box on the table. "Show me your hands," she says. He silently holds out his hands to her, his wrists turned upward. Red, inflamed stripes from the handcuffs encircle them. There are abrasions, some with dried blood. Ava sits down next to him on the couch. She soaks a cotton pad in hydrogen peroxide. "It'll sting." He nods. She carefully touches the disc to his left wrist. He flinches but doesn't pull his hand away. She cleans the wound, removing dirt and dried blood. She does this with concentration. Then she applies a thin layer of ointment. Her movements are confident. She's used to minor everyday injuries. She moves to his right hand. The procedure is the same. She feels his muscles tense under her fingers, feels the warmth of his skin. When she finishes and reaches for a roll of bandage to lightly bandage the deepest abrasions, her fingers slip. The roll falls to the floor between them. They both bend down at the same time to pick him up. Their hands meet in midair. His fingers, large and strong even in this state, brush briefly against hers. The contact is quick, casual, but it electrifies the silence in the room. Ava freezes mid-step. He does too. Their gazes meet, just for a split second. There's no anger or calculation in his eyes. There's a tired bewilderment there, bordering on apology, and gratitude. He's the first to pull his hand away, allowing her to lift the bandage. "Sorry," he says quietly. "Nothing," she replies, her voice a little higher than usual. She quickly returns to the bandage, trying not to look at his face. The air in the small room seemed thicker. The touch was fleeting, but it broke the invisible wall between savior and rescued, between the waitress and the mafia boss. Now there were just 2 people in the room, very different, and very alone, and this quiet contact reminded them of that. The day passes. Kihan sleeps a lot, sitting on the couch. He eats some soup that Awa made. His strength is slowly returning. He is silent and focused. That evening, he looks up at her. He's sitting on the edge of the sofa, his posture straighter than before. "I need a phone," he says. "Not yours. A burner. It can't be tracked." Ava shakes her head. "I don't have one." "Then it's yours," he says. "But I'll only dial 1 number. Just 1 call." She hesitates. Giving up her phone is a risk, but his face is serious. He's not asking. He's communicating. She understands. He needs to act. Being trapped isn't his style. She hands him her simple smartphone. He takes it, studies it for a second, then begins dialing. He does it slowly, carefully, as if recalling numbers he memorized long ago. He dials a long number, not from their city. He lifts the phone to his ear. The ring is long. 1, 2. On the third ring, someone picks up. No greeting from the other end. "It's me," Kihan says quietly. He falls silent, listening. His face is expressionless. "Yes, alive," he says after a pause. "No, nothing is needed except information. Just the facts. Speak." He serves for another minute, maybe 2. He only occasionally interjects short words. "Understood. When? Where?" Then he says, "Tomorrow, in the morning. The usual place. Alone," and hangs up. He hands the phone back to Ava. His eyes are cold and sharp, like a blade. "Early tomorrow. I need to meet someone. In the park to the northeast." They arrive at the park before dawn. The air is cold and damp, the ground covered in thick white fog. The trees stand like ghosts. No one is around. Only the occasional bird. Kihan leads her to a bench near a frozen fountain. He's wearing an old jacket, the hood pulled down over his short hair. He looks like one of the many poor guys in the area. "Stand over there by the kiosk," he says quietly. "Watch it. If something's wrong, leave. Don't run. Just go home." Ava nods, her heart pounding. She walks over to a closed ice cream stand and hides in its shadow. He sits down on the bench alone. He sits motionless, staring into the fog ahead. 5 minutes pass. 10. Then a figure appears out of the fog. A man. He's older, about 50, wearing a simple dark coat. He walks up to the bench and sits down next to Kihan. They don't look at each other. They don't shake hands. They speak quietly. Ava doesn't hear the words. She sees Kihan's shoulders tense. She sees the man say something, looking straight ahead. Kihan listens, then nods once, sharply. The man places a small brown envelope on the bench between them. Then he stands up, as if simply resting, and slowly walks away, disappearing into the fog in the other direction. Kihan sits alone for another minute. He looks around. Then, quickly, in one motion, he takes the envelope and stuffs it into the inside pocket of his jacket. He stands up and walks toward Ava. "Let's go," he says, walking past without stopping. She catches up with him. They walk quickly, but don't run, along the path toward the park exit. "Is everything okay?" she asks in a whisper. "I don't know," he answers honestly. "I got what I came for." They emerge onto the alley leading to the park gates. The fog is a little thinner here. They're already halfway there. This is where everything goes wrong. From behind the wide trunks of old Dumas, to the right and left of the alley, people emerge. First 2, then another, blocking the exit. They are dressed in dark, practical clothes. Their movements are quick and precise. They form a semicircle around them. Ava freezes. She grabs Kihan by the sleeve. He stops. His body becomes rigid as stone. He slowly turns his head, assessing their position. There is no escape. And then Ava sees him, the man in the coat who just handed over the envelope. He's standing off to the side, under a tree, about 10 meters away. He hasn't left. He's watching. Kihan sees him too. Their gazes meet through the fog. The man doesn't take a single step forward to help. He doesn't turn away. He simply stands there. His face is calm, almost indifferent. He watches this scene like a spectator. He's done his part. He lured them here. "Stay behind me," Kihan says quietly. Yue, without taking his eyes off the approaching people. But it's of little use. There are 3 of them, and they're clearly armed. One of them, in front, looks straight at Kihan. "Boss," he says, and there's not a shred of respect in the word. "Your brother wants to talk to you." "Nicely." Kihan doesn't answer. His hand clutches the envelope in his pocket. Ava can see his thoughts working. He's searching for an option, a loophole. But the park is empty, the fog obscuring everything, including them. The man under the tree, the one who handed over the envelope, finally makes a move. He turns and begins to slowly walk deeper into the park, his back to them. His job is done. The betrayal was complete, and it was so simple. Kihan doesn't move. He stands, assessing the 3 men. His face is stony. He understands that now he will either be killed or taken again. Both options are bad. Ava sees it. She sees his stillness, and she acts before she can think. She jerks his arm sharply to the side, toward a narrow opening between 2 oak trees into the bushes. "Run!" she shouts, and it's more of an order than a request. His instincts kick in. He rushes after her into the bushes. A shout and the clatter of feet come from behind. They burst out onto another alley. The fog is thicker here. Ava doesn't think. She just runs. She knows this neighborhood. She grew up here. She pulls Kihan along with her into the alley between the garages. They are being chased. They hear quick footsteps, voices calling to others. Ava turns the corner, ducks through an archway between two houses. A courtyard. She leads him through a playground, past sleeping cars. They climb over a low fence. Then another courtyard. She leads him through a labyrinth of familiar places, through gateways that smell of cats and garbage, through vacant lots overgrown with weeds. She doesn't look back, she only listens. The footsteps come closer, then recede. The screams become more angry. Several people are already looking for them. Kihan runs after her silently. His breathing is heavy, but he doesn't fall behind. He trusts her knowledge of these places. They emerge onto a deserted street with closed shops. Ava stops, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. She looks around. No one. For a second, it seems they've lost touch. And then one of them comes out from around the corner at the far end of the street. He sees them. He shouts something to his people. "Over here!" Ava grabs Kihan again and runs across the road to the abandoned construction site on the other side. The fence around the construction site is torn in several places. They squeeze inside. The area is large and empty. The foundation of some building had begun, but then work stopped. Concrete blocks, piles of sand, and rusty rebar are scattered about. In the distance, an unfinished frame of gray concrete and the dark openings of future windows are visible. They run towards this frame. They run inside. There are no walls here, only concrete columns and ceilings. The floor is covered with debris, broken bricks, and glass. Dark beams hang overhead. They crawl into the farthest corner, behind a pile of bags of hardened cement. They sit on the cold concrete floor, leaning their backs against the wall. Silence. Only their heavy, raspy breathing. They listen. At first, distant voices can be heard beyond the fence. Then they fade. Then silence falls. Maybe they've been lost. Maybe they're being looked for elsewhere. Ava is shaking. From fear, from the cold, from adrenaline. The air here is damp and cold. It smells of mold, rusty metal, and rain that once soaked the sand. There is almost no light, only the gray morning light filtering through the concrete skeleton of the building. Kihan sits next to her, his eyes closed. He breathes deeply, trying to regain his strength. Then he opens his eyes and looks at her. "You knew where to run," he says quietly, his voice hoarse from running. "I live here," Ava answers shortly. She hugs herself. "Are they gone?" "I don't know. I think so far, yes. They're checking other streets." They sit in silence for several minutes, listening to every rustle. Nothing, only the wind humming through the reinforcement. Kihan slowly pulls the envelope out of his pocket. He crumples it in his hands. "Damn," he says quietly. Not in anger, but with a strange, weary understanding. "Who was that man?" Ava asks. She needs to speak to keep from going crazy from the silence and anticipation. "An old acquaintance," Kian says. He looks at the envelope. "I thought he was still working for my father. The old rules. I was wrong. What's in the envelope?" Kihan silently opens it. There's no letter inside, just a small steel key on a thin chain, and a scrap of paper with a printed number, 217. He holds the key in his palm and shows it to Uu. "This is the key to a safe deposit box at a private bank. There are several in the city. We need to figure out which one." "What's in the safe?" Kian looks at the key. His face hardens. "Evidence. On my family, on my father, on everything we've done for the last 10 years. Accounting records, names, payments, everything that could send us all to prison for a long time." Ava is silent, processing this. "And your brother wants this?" "My brother wants me out, but to completely control the case, he needs this," Kian says, clutching the key in his fist. "With these papers, he can blackmail all of Father's old allies, force them to work for him, or simply destroy them if they refuse. He doesn't just want to take my place. He wants to rewrite all the rules, make the case more ruthless, and he knows I won't allow it. So first, I had to disappear." He turns to Ava. His eyes seem very dark in the dim light. "He didn't just betray me. He's betraying everything our father built. Yes, it was criminal, but it had its own laws, its own boundaries. Brother erases those boundaries. And this key, it's his way to take over everything, or my way to stop him." Ava looks at the key in his hand. This small piece of iron now seems the center of everything. "And what are we going to do?" she asks. The word "we" slips out of her mouth. Kihan looks at her, then at the key. "First, I need to figure out which bank. Then I need to get it. But now they know I'm free. And that I might try. There will be guards everywhere. They sit in the cold twilight of an abandoned construction site. Ki-han twirls his key in his fingers, his face focused on the problem, how to find the bank and how to get in. Ava watches him. Her own fear recedes, giving way to practicality. She survived in this region not because she was the strongest, but because she knew how to navigate obstacles. And now she sees only one thing. This number, 217. It's printed on a piece of paper, right? She says. Ki-han looks at the scrap. Yes. Standard printer. The private banks you're talking about. They're all downtown. Expensive with armored doors. But there's another one. On the outskirts near the old warehouses. It looks simpler. Small companies store their documents there, rent out storage boxes. My friend Lisa works there as a security guard. She sometimes complains that it's the most boring place in the world. Ki-han looks up at her, interest blazing in his eyes. You think it could be him? Why store something like that somewhere cheap? Ava shrugs. Who's going to look for important documents in the most remote bank in the area? Especially if you don't want your competitors or family to find them. Your father was probably cunning. Ki-han nods slowly. It makes sense. His father really did prefer to hide his power rather than show it. Your friend. Will she help? Not directly. She won't break the rules. But she might not notice. If we arrive at the right time. She works at the entrance, checking passes. In the morning, when the bank first opens, she's alone on duty for the first half hour, until the second shift and the administrator arrive. During this time, she makes coffee and checks the news on her phone. I know her schedule. Half an hour! Ki-han digests the information. Entry by pass. We don't have one. Cameras? At the entrance, yes. In the vault room, no. Lisa said they didn't install them to protect client privacy. Only at the exit and in the operating room. He's considering. The plan is crude, but it's a plan. There's an entry point, a weak spot, a window of opportunity. What if it's the wrong bank? Then we'll just leave, like regular customers who've walked into the wrong door. Ki-han looks at her, and something new appears in his gaze. Not judgment, but respect. She thinks like him, practically finding weaknesses. Okay, he says. We'll work according to your plan. But we need different clothes. These ones might have remembered. They leave the construction site after dark. Ava takes him not to her place, but to another neighborhood, to a church where there's a large clothing donation container. People put old clothes there. Sometimes, to take something, you just need to know the bottom of the container is rotten. She knows. They wait until the street empties. Ava reaches into the narrow opening at the base of the container and pulls out several items. 2 sweaters, plain and worn, a pair of dark trousers that would roughly fit Ki-han, a woman's jacket, and a hat for herself. All the items are clean, but impersonal, completely ordinary. They change clothes in the dark entryway of a neighboring building. Baggy sweaters hide their figures. Ava rolls up Ki-han's overly long pants. She straightens his hair again, making it even more unkempt. She pulls her hat over her head, hiding her hair. They look at each other. Now they look like a couple of homeless people or night shift workers. Nothing special. Opening, Ava says, checking the time on her phone. In 6 hours. The bank opens at 8. We need to be there at 7:50 to see Lisa arrive and open the door. And wait for the right moment. They find an abandoned heating main not far from the bank they need. It's dry and relatively warm. They sit in the dark, trying to sleep in turns. Ki-han is struggling. He's constantly on guard. Ava dozes fitfully, her sleep shallow and restless. An hour before opening, they leave. The morning is cold and foggy. The streets are almost empty. They walk to the bank, a nondescript, 1-story gray brick building with a sign that reads, Trust Safe. It really does look like a warehouse. They take up a position in a gateway across the street. From here, the front door and part of the parking lot are visible. At precisely 7:45, an old car pulls up. A woman in a security uniform steps out. It's Lisa. She yawns, takes out her keys, opens the bank's iron door, and disappears inside. The lights in the small trading room behind the glass wall come on. Ava whispers. She'll make coffee and turn on the system. She has 10 minutes until she focuses. They're about to come out of hiding and just walk inside, when Ki-han suddenly grabs her elbow. Stop! Look! A dark SUV emerges from around the corner of the neighboring building. It slowly drives past the bank, without stopping, and disappears around the corner. Ki-han says quietly. His voice is calm, but there's a steely edge to it. Their reconnaissance. There were two in the car. They drove by to check out the situation. Now they're parking the car in a secluded spot and returning on foot. There will be at least two of them, maybe more. They'll be watching the entrance. Ava feels her plan crumbling. We can't go through the door. They'll recognize us. Or they'll just hold us back, just in case. They retreat deeper into the gateway. Panic rises in their throats. They are so close. And there is the wall. Ava frantically looks around. Her gaze falls on the side wall of the bank. There, almost at the ground, is a metal grate. It's large, about half a meter wide and high. A ventilation shaft, or access to utilities. Liza complained, Iva suddenly says, that homeless people got into their basement through the ventilation last year. They made her stand guard there until the grate was welded shut. But it was our local welders, the Mikheyev brothers, who did the welding. They always do a sloppy job. Kihan looks at the bars, then at her. Do you think it can be removed? We can try, but it's from the side. They might see us. They wait another 5 minutes. The SUV doesn't return. This means the observers are already in position, but most likely keeping an eye on the front entrance and the parking lot. The side wall is in shadow, so they don't have to look there. Fast and quiet, says Kian. They emerge from the gateway not together, but one at a time, as if strangers. Ava goes first. She approaches the bank wall and pretends to search for something in her pocket, leaning against the grate. She pushes it from the inside with her palm. The metal gives slightly, with a dull creak. She pushes harder. One corner of the grate pulls away from the wall. The fastening on that side isn't welded, but bolted on, and the bolts have rotted from the damp. Kihan approaches from the other side. He quickly assesses the fasteners. He takes a small folding knife from his pocket, the blade of which he found at the construction site. He inserts the blade into the crack and presses hard on the bolt. The metal creaks, and the bolt breaks. He unscrews the second bolt with his fingers. It was barely holding. After 3 minutes, the grate is held on by a single bolt. They can't remove it completely without attracting attention, but they can bend it back enough to squeeze through. Kihan looks at Ava. I'll go first. If there's an alarm or someone's there, she nods. He clings to the edge of the opening with his hands. Beyond is a black hole, smelling of dust and cold. He squeezes through and disappears. Ava hears his muffled voice. Clear. Passage. Go ahead. She looks around. The street is empty. She quickly crawls through the hole. From inside, Kihan tries to put the grate back in place, so it won't be visible from the outside. They stand in a narrow concrete tunnel. A faint light glimmers ahead. It's the bank's basement. They're moving toward it. Their plan has changed. They didn't enter as customers. They entered as robbers. And somewhere outside, at the main entrance, people are waiting for them who want the same thing they do, but by different means. The bank's basement turned out to be small. It contained heating boilers and rows of metal shelves holding archives in cardboard boxes. At the far end, they saw a heavy metal door with a sign reading Vault, Access by Pass. Handwritten pin card hung on the wall next to it. Apparently, the staff didn't consider this place particularly secret. Kihan quickly entered the code. There was a click. He pulled the door toward him. Beyond it was the vault itself, a small, windowless room. The walls were lined with metal cells of varying sizes, each with a number. The air was dry and cool. A dim light burned. They entered. Ava closed the door behind them. 217, Kihan whispered, his eyes quickly scanning the numbers. Cell 217 was in the middle row, at chest level. It wasn't the largest, but it wasn't the smallest either. It had a standard key lock. Kihan pulled out a key on a chain. His hand was steady, but Ava could see the tension in his neck muscles. He inserted the key into the lock. The key turned smoothly, almost silently. There was a soft click. He pulled the metal door of the cell towards himself. It opened. There were no folders with documents inside. There were no stacks of papers, disks, or flash drives. Inside lay a single object. Photo. Kihan froze. He couldn't believe his eyes. He pulled out the photograph. It was an ordinary paper photo, worn at the edges. He turned it over. Ava watched his face. At first, it expressed only bewilderment. Then, slowly, like ice, this bewilderment began to give way to something else, something cold and heavy. Kihan silently handed the photograph to Ava. She took it. The photo showed two young men. Summer, sunshine, somewhere outdoors. One of them was about 18, and he was undoubtedly Kihan. He looked younger, his eyes less hard, his smile wide and open. His arm was wrapped around the shoulders of the other man, who was 2, maybe 3 years older. He had the same dark hair, similar features, but even then his gaze was more reserved, appraising. An older brother. They were both laughing. It seemed the photographer had just said something funny. They looked happy, like real brothers. Ava looked at the photo, then at Kihan. The contrast was stark. The man in the photo and the one standing before her now were like two different people. One thing connected them, the pain she saw in his eyes, pain that grew with every second. "Your brother," she said quietly, not as a question. Kihan nodded. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the photograph in her hands. He looked at his past, at the smile he thought would never appear again. "Jin-ho," he whispered the name. His voice broke. Kian took the photograph back. He turned it over. On the back, in blue ink, was a note. Not printed, but handwritten, cursive, sharp, and confident. He read it. His face turned completely pale. The blood seemed to drain from his skin. He stood motionless, clutching the corner of the photograph so tightly that his fingers turned white. "What is it?" Ava asked, but she was already afraid to hear the answer. Kihan didn't answer. He handed her the photograph, reverse side up. Ava read it. The inscription was short, just 4 words, but they explained everything. "I'm sorry. I had to choose a side. D." The handwriting. That was the most terrifying thing. Kihan recognized it immediately. He'd seen that handwriting 1,000 times. On notes left on the table, on birthday cards as a child, on documents they'd signed together. It was his brother's handwriting. Jinho, everything fell into place with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just a betrayal for power. It was planned. And it was personal. Not just enemies. Not just competitors. A brother. The one with whom he shared his childhood. Secrets. Perhaps even dreams. The one whose face in this photograph glowed with genuine joy. This man gave the order to kidnap him. Lock him up. Leave him to die in an underground hole. And then, as a final blow, left him this. A mockery? A farewell? An explanation? Kihan recoiled from her, leaning his back against the cold metal cells. He clutched his head in his hands. His breathing became ragged. It wasn't a scream or tears. It was an internal explosion that shattered everything inside him. All his calculations, his anger, his understanding of the world. He thought he was fighting for a cause, for a legacy, for power. But it turned out he'd simply been erased from life, like something worthless. And the person closest to him did it. All this time. His voice was hoarse and broken. He looked me in the eye, at family dinners, listened to my plans, gave me the key to this place, knowing there was nothing here, knowing I would come here. He set it all up. The meeting in the park, the betrayal. He just led me around in circles, like a toy. He looked at Ava. There was an emptiness in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Even in the basement, in chains, the fire of rage had burned within him. Now that too was extinguished. He doesn't just want my place. He wants me to give in, to realize I have nothing left, not even a past. He slid slowly down the wall to the floor, still clutching the photograph. He sat staring into space. Ava stood over him. She didn't know what to say. Words of comfort were useless. She had just witnessed a man's entire world collapse. Not the external world of power and money, but the internal one. The world of trust, family, brotherhood. She sat down next to him on the cold floor, not touching him, just being there. The silence in the vault was absolute. Outside, only the faint hum of the city could be heard. But here, in this room, they sat among metal cells that held other people's secrets, and the most terrible secret had just been revealed. It was empty, like cell number 217. There was no money or documents there, only the truth, and it was worse than any lie. They sit on the cold floor of the storage facility for several minutes. Kihan doesn't move. He stares into space. The photograph lies on his lap. Then he slowly raises his head and looks at Ava. There's no longer any emptiness in his eyes. A decision has appeared there, heavy and final. "You have to leave," he says. His voice is quiet but firm. "Now." While they're watching the entrance, the side grill is still opening. "Get out and go home. Forget you ever saw me. Lock the door and don't open it for anyone." Ava looks at him, not believing her ears. "What? No, I'm not leaving you here. You've already done more than you should have," Kihan says. He stands up, his movements abrupt. "This is my war. My brother. He's playing with me, but you're just a nuisance to him. If he finds out you've helped me, he'll take you out, just to leave no witnesses. Do you understand? I understand that if I leave, they will come in here and find you," says Ava, also getting up. "You're trapped." I'm supposed to be trapped, he replies. His face hardens into a mask. That's what he wants. For me to give in. For me to realize I have nowhere to run. Okay, I get it. So the game ends here. But you weren't part of it. Go away. He turns his back to her, as if cutting off the conversation. But Ava doesn't give in. She approaches him and stands in front of him. Are you listening to yourself? Her voice trembled with anger. He almost won. He made you believe you were alone, that you had nothing. And that's not true. What truth? He turns around sharply. I have no business, no family, no home. I only have a duty to you, not to drag you down with me. You don't owe me anything, she nearly screams, lowering her voice at the last moment. I decided to open that door myself, and I decide when to leave. And I'm not leaving you here to be torn apart by your psychotic brother. That's stupid. They stand face to face in the narrow aisle between the shelves, both breathing heavily. Ki-hun finally says, his voice is challenging. Run? Where? He'll find me. Fight? I have no men, no weapons, nothing. Just this empty cell and a photograph. I suggest you don't do what he expects of you, Ava says. He's waiting for you to break, or run into the trap screaming. Don't let him do that. Ki-hun looks at her. The anger in his eyes gradually fades, replaced by tired contemplation. Then what? Ki-hun doesn't answer right away. He takes out Ava's phone, the one she gave him in the park. He looks at it, then back at the empty slot. Something clicks in his head. A game. His brother loves games. He left me a message, Ki-hun says quietly. That means he's waiting for a response. What do you want to do? Ki-hun opens his phone. He dials a number, the same long number he remembers. But now he knows who it belongs to. The call doesn't last long. They pick up almost immediately. Brother, Ki-hun says into the receiver. His voice is perfectly even, cold. He listens. His face is unreadable. I received your message. In the box. Witty. I appreciated it. A pause. He listens to what Jinho is saying. No, I'm not giving up. I'm just tired of running. Let's finish this. Where it all began. At the cafe, in an hour. Just the two of us. Let's talk. Like brothers. Another pause. Then Ki-hun nods, though he can't see. Okay, I'll wait. He hangs up. Ava looks at him in horror. Are you crazy? It's a trap. He won't come alone. I know, Ki-hun says calmly. But he'll come. He'll be curious. To see my defeat in person. That's just his style. He hands her the phone back. Now listen carefully. We're leaving through the vent. We're heading toward the cafe, but not inside. I'm going inside alone. You stay outside, where we hid in the storage room, in the courtyard. Wait for me for 10 minutes. If I don't come out, you run. Don't look back. Understand? No, I don't understand. Why do you need to go there? Because I need to take something back there, Kian says. A strange, almost lifeless glint appears in his eyes. And because there's only one way to win against a guy who thinks he controls everything, you have to burn the board. They climb back out through the vent. The street is still quiet. No one is watching. They sneak around the back streets to the cafe. Ava feels ill. This plan seems crazy to her. They enter the cafe courtyard through a hole in the fence. The kitchen door is locked, but Ava has a key. She opens it. The interior smells of yesterday's coffee and detergent. Ki-hun enters first. He doesn't turn on the living room light. He goes straight to the kitchen. Ava follows him. He approaches the large stove. It's gas, old-fashioned, with massive cast-iron burners. Ki-hun opens the oven door. Then he kneels and peers under the stove. His fingers brush against something in the gap between the wall and the back of the stove. He pulls, and with a soft scraping sound, a small metal plate slides away from the wall, a removable panel for accessing the utilities. He reaches inside, into the space behind the gas pipe, and pulls out a small, tightly wrapped black plastic bag. What is this? Whispers Ava. Insurance, Ki-hun says shortly. He unwraps the package. Inside is the usual flash drive, the real one. Father Yi hid it here, in the most unexpected place, many years ago. Jinho didn't know about it. He thought all the evidence was in the bank, but this is a copy, and something else, something that could destroy him alone, even without everything else. He puts the flash drive in his pocket. Then he looks at the stove, at the gas isfives. He won't come alone, Ki-hun says quietly. His men will be around. They'll come inside when they realize I'm here, or when he gives the signal. He turns to Ava and takes her by the shoulders. His gaze is serious. I'll light the gas, and I'll leave through the basement, through that same door. When they enter, one spark will be enough. This isn't to destroy them. This is to obliterate this place, so they won't have time to search. So there's only fire and chaos. And in that chaos, we'll leave. Understood? Ava looks at him with wide eyes. She nods because she can't speak. Go into the yard now. Wait by the wall, under the window. When you see my face in the basement window, run to the hole in the fence. Don't stop. Ava goes out into the yard. Her heart is beating so hard, she can hear it in her ears. She leans against the cold brick wall, under the small basement window. The minutes drag on endlessly. She hears the sound of cars approaching on the street, the dull slam of doors. Voices. There are several of them. They are walking towards the entrance of the cafe. Then she hears the front door open, footsteps in the hall. A voice. Foreign. Confident. It must be Jinho. Silence. He calls Kihan, and then she smells it. The sharp chemical smell of household gas. It seeps through the cracks in the windows, filling the yard. Ava presses her hand to her mouth to keep from screaming. She looks at the dark basement window, and she sees him. His face appears behind the dirty glass. He looks straight at her. He nods once. Sharply, she pushes off the wall and runs across the yard to the hole in the fence. She squeezes through, clawing at her arms. She runs out into the alley and runs without looking back. She's half a block away when she hears a dull, heavy thud from behind. Not a loud explosion, but more of a powerful bang that shakes the ground beneath her feet. She turns around. Above the cafe's roof, plumes of black-gray smoke billow from the vents and windows. The fire is invisible, only the smoke, thick and toxic, creeping into the gray morning. The sound of shattering glass and screams can be heard. Alarms from parked cars ring. Ava stands and watches, breathing heavily. Tears stream down her face, but she can't tell if they're from fear, shock, or relief. A man emerges from the shadows of the entranceway next to her. It's Kihan. He's still wearing the same old jacket. There's soot on his face. He looks at the smoke rising above the cafe. His face is expressionless. Come on, he says simply, taking her by the elbow. He leads her down the alley, away from the fire, away from the screams, away from the place that had been his prison and was now a charred ruin. They walk silently, mingling with the other people who have poured out onto the streets to watch the fire. They become just two faces in the crowd. When they find themselves in a different neighborhood, in a quiet park, Kihan stops. He looks at the flash drive in his hand. This is all I have left, he says, and my debt to you is one I will never repay. Ava looks at him, at a man with no past, no future, but with the key to the truth in his pocket. What now? She asks. Kihan looks at the smoke, still visible in the distance, a dirty stain on the sky. Now we disappear, for a while, and then we use this. He clutches the flash drive in his fist, but not for revenge, to end this, forever. He turns to face her. There's no longer any rage or despair in his eyes, only a weary determination. Are you with me? He asks, and for the first time, his voice sounds not like an order, but a question, a real question. Ava looks at the smoke, at the city, at this strange, broken, and dangerous man next to her. She no longer has a job, no longer has a familiar life, but she has a choice. She nods slowly. Yes, I'm with you. They turn and walk deeper into the city, leaving behind the smoke and fire of their old lives. A new day has arrived, and it promises nothing, only uncertainty, and a quiet, solid flash drive in their pocket that could change everything.